Hello, I am Michael Cuspa, and I will be going over the case, Small Wins, Big Change, Broad-Based Empowerment, Implementation of Restorative Justice Practices. In this case, the implementation of restorative justice practices was mandated by the district superintendent in each school for the 2015 school year. Each school in the district was directed to appoint a restorative practices trainer. Each trainer was directed to design an implementation plan with their principal, and each trainer received a week of training by the Institute of Restorative Practices over the summer. The identified issues of this case: in this one school, culture change. The implementation of restorative justice practices requires a change to deep structure. The entire school staff needs to be trained, and there is no anticipation of the conservative impulse. There was the issue of time. No time was allocated for adequate staff training. The staff received a total of 15 minutes of training in a pre-service day at the start of the beginning of the year. There's also no time allocated for adequate program oversight. There was lack of a clear vision. There is confusion due to multiple behavioral programs being implemented simultaneously, such as the positive behavior interventions and supports known as PBIS. Restorative practices are defined by the International Institute for Restorative Practice as a social science that studies how to build social capital and achieve social discipline through participatory learning and decision-making. The intent is to reduce crime, violence, and bullying, improve human behavior, strengthen civil society, provide effective leadership, restore relationships, and repair harm. The restorative practices in this case to be implemented range from informal effective statements, effective questioning, small impromptu conferences, circles where faculty and students shared their thoughts and feelings, and formal conferences designed to repair harm. The stakeholder perspectives. The restorative justice trainer understands that the implementation of restorative justice practices requires at least 2 days of staff training. However, his first priority is his full-time job as a middle school science teacher. He is serving purely in an advisory role to the principal with no actual authority in the implementation process. The principal is directed by the superintendent to implement restorative justice practices. She has not received any training in restorative justice practices except for the 15 minutes provided by the restorative justice trainer. She knows the restorative justice trainer developed a plan. She has directed staff to conduct restorative circles within their classrooms. However, she does not want to burden teachers with additional tasks. Teachers, although initially receptive to the idea of restorative justice practices, have continued to focus on the priority of maximizing their instructional time. This has pushed restorative justice practices aside in order to conduct business as usual. The teachers do not fully understand the long-term instructional benefits of restorative justice practices. They are also confused as to what restorative justice practices actually are and how they are different from PBIS. The support staff, consisting of paraprofessionals, cafeteria staff, and security, have not been exposed to restorative justice training, although they may have observed some restorative circles. Students have been extremely receptive to restorative justice practices. They see restorative circles as a way to have their voices heard. They feel supported when asked about why something happened, instead of being accused or scolded. Parents have not been formally introduced to restorative justice practices through school communications, although some parents may have knowledge of practices from local news media or through their child. Connections to theoretical and empirical research. There are several models that I have examined for the implementation of restorative justice. This first model is a 5-stage model by Morrison, Blood, and Thorsberg. Stage 1 is gaining commitment, capturing the hearts and minds of all stakeholders. Stage 2 is developing a shared vision, having all stakeholders involved in establishing a vision for where restorative practices are going to go and what they are going to accomplish. Stage 3 is developing responsive and effective practice, and that is changing the culture of the organization and how things are done. Stage 4 is developing a whole school approach, putting restorative practices together with all stakeholders. Stage 5 is conducting restorative practices among all the professionals within the school. The second model examined are 6 steps toward initiating restorative justice as developed by Kitty and Alfred. The first step is identifying the need and to recognize that better outcomes are possible with behavior using restorative justice practices. The second step is to assess the readiness for school-wide restorative justice. 3 is building interest within the staff, students, and stakeholders. Number 4 was attending an initial training. Now this is part of the model that was actually conducted, in this case, by the respective school. 5th was engaging school and district stakeholders. And 6, the other part of the plan, which was done in this case, was developing an action plan. The third model that has been examined are these school adoption steps by the National Opportunity to Learn campaign. Like the previous ones, it assesses prior knowledge of restorative justice practices to determine training requirements. Again, it establishes a team of stakeholders to assess the current school climate. And now it also dedicates a time of day to practice restorative techniques. By establishing a time of day for these techniques, this overcomes the time allocation issue as identified earlier. And again, it seeks to gain input from community stakeholders throughout the adoption process, while aligning school policies and practices, and collecting and examining data throughout the process, and offering ongoing training to build capacity within the organization. There are also Cotter's 8 steps of change. The first 3 steps creating a climate of change, the second 3 steps engaging and enabling the whole organization, and the last 2 steps implementing and sustaining change. If you notice the last 2 steps, 7 and 8, in this case, this is where the implementation of restorative justice practices, in this case, started, without creating a climate for change, without engaging and enabling the whole organization. The analysis and evaluation. There was no climate created for change. We need to create an urgency for change. An assessment must be made of the current school climate. We must build interest within all stakeholders. We must communicate for buy-in. There's also no clear vision. Clear vision must be established. A clear vision must be communicated to all stakeholders. The whole school must be engaged and enabled. All staff must be trained. Change must be implemented and monitored. Data must be continually collected. Training must be ongoing. Successes must be celebrated. And we recommend that the principal adopt the principles of sustainable leadership. Recommendations for action. We must reestablish urgency and communicate for buy-in. Pulling together all staff and present the current status on suspensions and behavioral referrals. We must appoint school leaders to present this information to stakeholders that cannot be present. We must have teachers communicate restorative justice practices to students and communicate these practices at a PTO meeting. We must empower and train all staff. The trainer must be able to be allocated time to train the teachers and administrators, and also possibly appoint key personnel within the school that can be advisors that can further assist the restorative justice trainer in training all staff members. And we must have the principal establish a clear vision of what restorative justice practices will look like in our school. Evaluation of consequences. We must reestablish, again, in reestablishing urgency and communicating for buy-in, staff may feel like they're being scolded for not properly implementing restorative justice. Staff may also feel that the restorative justice practices are not working and that retraining is unnecessary. In empowering staff, staff may feel additionally burdened for having to train others. And in establishing a clear vision by focusing on the implementation of restorative justice practices, we may unintentionally place less emphasis on the implementation of other initiatives such as PBIS. Thank you.